Let's go now to the interior offensive lineman rankings. We got 3 centers, 3 guards, our top 3 at each. Now, for anyone who's watching on YouTube now, and also for the people who are listening, let's remind you the normal rules of the pros and cons that we normally do. And the biggest part of our rankings here is the actual rankings themselves of the grades, the Alex cooking crystal meth formula that I like to reference from Breaking Bad. He's got the formula down. He uses the calculations of the formula. The calculations from the formula give you the overall grade, and the score correlates to the pick. He's away. Okay, he's on vacation. It's sad, but unfortunately, fun is better than formulas, apparently. And so
I'm
we do
sorry,
not have
everyone.
the formulas today. However, the rankings still stand of what we believe is our top 3 at each position, and we still have where we are projecting them to go in the draft. It's just a little bit less, and the rankings will go a little bit quicker than they normally do. All right, Alex. Let's start off with Olu Oluwatimi, the 3rd ranked center on our list. 6'2", 309 pounds, a senior out of Michigan. His pros: adequate drive strength and lower body as a single blocker, plays with above average core strength, and secures first block before peaking up to the 2nd level. I have him as a mid-3rd round pick, and I'll let you go.
Yeah, I mean, when I've watched Michigan in the past, I always have noticed him as just kind of that leader of the offensive line. I always, for some reason, watch a lot of Michigan games. I don't know why, but he's always, he's relatively solid in pass protection. He's not going to wow you with his physicality. Obviously, you mentioned he's only 6'2", 309. And overall, he's just a strong, it seems like a high IQ player whenever I watched him. And I'm actually surprised that he's been mocked so low. He hasn't really been in that conversation at center a lot for these top rankings, and we actually have him over a couple of the other guys who I guess are more consensus top 3. Wait, who's from Wisconsin? That I'm blanking on his name right now.
Is it Joe
Tippmann.
Tippmann?
Yeah, Joe Tippmann. So we have. I guess this is kind of spoiler alert, but we have him above Tippmann on this list, and I think this is a fair spot for him. And you said mid-3rd round. I think that's probably about where he's going to go, and that's also where we have him graded.
Yeah, and I didn't get to touch on the weaknesses here, so I do also want to say that his kick slide's inconsistent. He's also got a bad habit of some points panicking when he has blocks or people lunging or grabbing, and then also he'll occasionally stop his feet when delivering blocks. So that is another thing to note. Therefore, his cons, I forgot to write it in our outline, so good thing I remembered here. We go on to number 2 now. Luke Weipler. 6'3", 303 pounds, a junior from The Ohio State University. Some pros for him include his snap to step quickness for A-gap blocks, his athleticism pulling around the edge and finding some work to do, and he climbs the linebacker at winning angles. However, there is always cons. Arms are short by NFL standards, and he will lose control of some base blocks due to the lack of length. So kind of hand in hand with the arms are short. What happens with his arms short? He's going to lose control of some blocks there. He also had issues snapping the ball at the correct time in 2021, which resulted in penalties. That was last season. I was going to say that was 2 seasons ago. I'm just used to 2023 now. That was last season. But as a center, it's your basic fundamental to snap the football. So if that's a problem, that's a big deal. However, he cleaned it up this past season, so that's definitely a good thing. And the projection for Weipler is higher than Olu. I did it well. Now Oluwatimi. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I got it the first try.
Notice how I avoided the name throughout my entire talk about it.
Well, we could just call him Olu as well. I mean, it was kind of like Ike Ekwonu last year. You just called him Ike instead of his full first name. But it was annoying because the first run, I guess it's like when you're looking at the last name, it's you're reading it.
You're on a roll, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, let me continue. Weipler ahead of where we think Olu will be on this draft or in this draft, and we think Weipler is going to be a late 2nd round pick. Anyway, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say is he's really well balanced in terms of his run blocking and pass protection. He's an excellent run blocker, as Josh has, kind of mentioned, and he's also great in pass protection. Actually, was second highest graded center pass protector or pass protector. I don't know why that was so hard to say this past season. You did mention the short arms. That's definitely a concern. He's 20th percentile in terms of his arm length, and because of that, he just doesn't get a lot of power from his arms, and that could be a struggle against some more physically imposing interior defensive linemen. So that's definitely a concern. Despite him, being a decent size at 6'3", 303, it's more the arm length that's really a big concern. I think that could end up driving him down, 10, 15, maybe even 20 picks if he had, let's say 90th percentile arm length. So certainly an interesting one there, and I'm kind of fascinated to see where he ends up going. Obviously, came from a big school in Ohio State, had a lot of experience there with C.J. Stroud and all that, talented Ohio State offense. So I'm interested to see where he ends up. But we have him here as our second highest graded center. And I'll let you go to our number one guy, who I think is kind of the consensus number one guy.
Yeah, also, according to PFF with Weipler, had allowed only one sack out of 449 passing snaps. So I want to note that down too. Okay, number one, John Michael Schmitz. We've talked about him before, last episode especially too. 6'3", 301 pounds, senior out of Minnesota. The main pro with him is how vocal he is on the offensive line. Definitely a leader that he was at Minnesota, and I'm sure he can bring that to whatever team he goes to. He makes up makes all the calls up front, obviously, like I said, lateral quickness from reach blocks in the outside zone as well. He's also consistent as a block finisher. So you hear block, both of those pros there. A very good blocker, Schmitz is. However, he does come with cons. Below average adjustments to moving targets. His arm length, another guy with below average arm length, and gets overextended with aggressive pass setting slides, I should say. We have him projected as a late first round pick. It keeps on climbing up. So he started out as a mid to late or early to a mid second round pick. Now he's kind of crept up to a late first round pick, and it could be a mid first round pick by the time we get to later April.
Yeah, you mentioned his pass protection issues. That's definitely the big concern for Schmitz. It's more that, is he going to be able to adjust to NFL pass protection? As a run blocker, he's outstanding. He's going to be able to keep up and really push the line of scrimmage. But on, when some of these elite pass rushing interior guys are running at you, how are you going to be able to do? Actually, for Schmitz, I did actually end up grading him. I did a little bit of research for him. I had him as a second round graded player in terms of what we did, or like an early second round graded player. And it does look like now he's going to be a late first round, maybe even mid first round player. And one more thing to mention with him, which is really important, he's already 24 years old. So that's something that needs to be taken into account when you look at the lack of positional value already at the center spot, and then the lack of value that maybe you get a younger guy, maybe 2 years younger, in someone like Weipler or Whippler, who, is going to give you a more longevity long term. So that's definitely something to think about as well. And he only played center in college. Another thing, right? Some of these other guys have had some flexibility. Olu has played all three interior spots. I believe Weipler has played guard a little bit. I'm not exactly positive, but I think he's played a few snaps at guard. So those guys have flexibility. Schmitz only at center.
So that's going to do it for our top three centers in this year's NFL draft. We move to our top three guards. A little bit harder to rank only because I feel like the position itself when it comes to the draft, centers are kind of easier to look at who stands out and who doesn't. Guards a little bit different, I would say. So third, we have here Cody Mock, 6'5", 302 pounds, North Dakota State senior. Very big guy. I mean, as all these guys are, but 6'5". Pros plays with desired demeanor and also toughness for the position. He looks to accelerate and obliterate down blocks, and he also sustains blocks on both first and the second level. However, some cons. Short arms. The arm length is really apparent in this episode, and this rankings, I should say, which sometimes also with his torso too, looks a little out of whack with a long torso or on long torso. Wait, I'm trying to figure out how I said this bullet. Yeah, short arms look out of whack on long torso. Footwork and pass sets can get away from him, and elevated strike point getting into his double teams. Second round grade for Mock. I'm going to look to see if I have any other notes on him in this other doc. I'm kind of going back and forth. Alex?
What I would say is someone who's usually 6'5" or above, obviously a little bit light at 302, usually is someone that looks more towards the tackle position than the guard position. But in this case, his short arms, never a good thing for a tackle. Tackles need long arms. If you remember a few years back for the New York Giants, or a couple of years back now, I don't know how many years, maybe 3 years ago, Matt Parrott was drafted 99th overall by the New York Giants because he had the longest arms in the draft. Not because he necessarily had the greatest tape at UConn, but you saw the upside there because the scouts see, I don't know how long his arms were, but they were extremely long. And they see, wow, what could he do at the tackle position because of that? And with Mock, I think it's, the lack of arm length is concerning, but when you're placed at the guard position, it's not as big of a deal as tackle or even center. I feel like at times when the center's one-on-one with the defensive tackle, sometimes that arm length could come in handy.
Yeah, only allowed 1 sack on 304 passing plays in his time at North Dakota State. Okay, now to number 2, I want to say, is Steve Avila. I think I mentioned him a little bit earlier. 6'3", 332 pounds, senior out of TCU. Pros, he's the team captain, so some leadership there. He's had a full season of starting experience at both center and left guard. So, Alex, you talk about experiences at different positions. There you go. That's one right there. Started at center in his earlier years as an underclassman in college. And then this past season when TCU made it to the national championship, he was their starting left guard. He plays with good flexion and body control for a man his size. Cons. Occasional delays in recognizing twist setups. Needs to steady his hands and improve his punch accuracy in pass pro, and could use some better rhythm and control with some steps into his first strike. A mid-second round grade for Avila, but a very good guard. I mean, one of the reasons, every player on that team had to be good in order for them to make it all to the national championship. Very good player there.
Yeah, Avila is a really interesting one. Some people have him marked down as a center in the NFL. Some people have him marked down as a guard. Obviously, we have him now marked down as a guard. We talked to Trevor Sikkema actually last week, so go check out that interview. And we were talking about with him about Avila, excuse me. And he was kind of saying, I see him more as a guard. You look at the snaps he played in college. He played a lot more guard in his most recent years than center. So, he probably projects more as a guard going forward in the NFL. And, I think after doing some more research after that, I originally had him as more of a center in my mind before talking to Trevor Sikkema. But now that he mentioned that, I kind of did a little bit of research after, and you realize, okay, 98% of the snaps or whatever he took in 2022 were at left guard specifically. He's probably a good fit at that position, considering that is the year that TCU ended up going to the national championship and was his best year as a college athlete. So definitely something to think about there. And there's not really much to say more about him than just the word leader. He's the leader of that TCU front. He was one of the key, pieces of that offense, along with Quentin Johnston, Max Duggan, obviously at quarterback. And, Steve Avila is right back up there as well. So I think he's going to go a lot earlier than people think, because I think teams really value leadership ability, experience. And I think he's going to go higher than people think. I think a lot of people have him pegged more in the 3rd round. I think he will go in most likely round 2, which is where we have him, right, Josh?
Yeah. I think Avila is a very good player. I could see him playing either both center or guard in the NFL. However, more recently, he's been playing guard. And again, we talk about him on the interview with Trevor Sikkema. So listen to that, whatever you want to do. That came out last week, and he definitely had some wise wisdom talking about Avila and how he fits into an NFL team. Okay, so now going to our number one, I would think the most obvious person here. I don't know who's more of an obvious person. Schmitz at number one on the centers list, or Osiris Torrance at number one on the guards list. I think it's up in the air. Definitely debatable here who's best at their respective position. 6'5", 330 pounds. Torrance is out of Florida. A junior, some pros. Very broad across the chest and waist. He has a wide build, which creates definitely an impediment for interior pass rushers. And then finally, he was penalty-free throughout the 2022 season per PFF, excuse me. So that's definitely a good thing. You want to not draw penalties as an offensive lineman. Cons, somewhat indecisive when faced with pressure looks, struggles to effectively mirror athletic rushers, and unable to bend and create proper leverage into contact. First round grade for Osiris Torrance. As Giants fans, we have seen him mocked to the New York Giants at 25 a numerous amount of times. However, at this point, I think Osiris' stock is rising, just like all these other guys really on the list. And I think he's going to be a mid-first round pick. I don't even think he's going to fall to 25 to the Giants anymore.
And, you mentioned how he could struggle against speed rushers. He's definitely susceptible to speed rush moves. His agility and overall athleticism is just not – I wouldn't say he's unathletic, but I wouldn't say he's, I guess a exquisite athlete like some of these other guys, that we've seen in the past couple years in the draft in general. How I would classify this offensive line class, this interior class specifically, if you're taking one thing from this episode or video, this offensive line class, they're not going to be testing off the charts, these interior guys, but they bring a lot of leadership, football IQ, and overall solid technique in run blocking and also pass pro. So that's what you get from them. There's not a lot of upside for a lot of these guys. They're not going to be much better than they are already. So I think that's kind of what you're looking at. You're not looking at taking a shot, a big risk like an Anthony Richardson at QB or a Quentin Johnston at wide receiver. You're kind of getting what you get, and you hopefully aren't upset. Did you like that, Josh? Is that funny? No. Anyway, so Torrance is a great player. He's got a huge frame. He's 6'5", 340-ish pounds. He's really good against stunts, which is obviously really helpful in the NFL, which is happens much more often than in college. And he's got really good, strong hands, experience at both guard spots. I think he's just a really, really solid guy who just doesn't get talked about enough in this draft class.
And with Torrance, that's going to do it for our top interior offensive lineman rankings in this year's NFL draft. I'll kind of run through it one more time just so everyone got it down. Let's start with the guards or centers who we did first, excuse me. We had Oluwatimi at number 3 there, Luke Weipler at 2, and John Michael Schmitz at 3 or at 1. I think I flipped it. Yep, I did. So Schmitz at 1, Weipler 2, Olu at 3. Guards going 1 to 3. Osiris Torrance at 1, Steve Avila at 2, and Cody Mock at 3. And again, hopefully we'll add the grades on later, but we'll have to wait and see. Takes time. But that's going to do it for our interior offensive lineman rankings for the 2023 NFL Draft.